I've been single for a long time. In fact, I've been single since the mid-90s when Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks made two movies pretending to be single and making the meeting of the perfect person to see almost inevitable and easy, which, by the way, it is not. But I have noticed a certain sociological evolution in my decades of occasional soirees into the world of dating, especially when using those dreaded internet dating sites, as we have all changed the parameters of what sort of person we are looking for to cure our isolation and to watch one another grow old. People always try to get their best foot forward, which often means that they're using a 10 to 20-year-old photograph of themselves from 50 or 60 pounds ago, to the implausible offerings that I've seen women put on their self-description about how much they love bass fishing and watching NASCAR, which always struck me as being a bit desperate, but at least I knew they were not looking for me. But lately it seems that most profiles include things like, if you voted for Trump, swipe left. Or if you got the vaccine, you're not for me, sheeple. I used to mostly look for single women who had scuba diving pictures in their profile, but at this age, I can stand a landlubber a whole lot more than I can tolerate someone who believes in conspiracy theories or who thinks that the 2020 election was stolen. I used to assess a first date's intelligence by casually asking if they read People magazine or if they believed in astrology. But now that IQ test is a lot easier to administer. You don't even have to ask who they voted for in the last election. It usually comes out before the salads are brought to the table. Even though most of us participate in the social divide around politics and the pandemic, almost all of us still hate it. We don't have as many friends as we used to have. Family gatherings are significantly smaller than they used to be, and God forbid that distant relatives might be sitting in the living room together in the evening and decide to turn on the TV news. Just deciding which channel you're going to watch could be a nightmare. Having DNA in common with someone is not enough to get me to sit quietly in the room with Fox News on. We are all sick of the partisan divides in our government, and we wish that we could find it easier to make pleasant conversation with total strangers on venial subjects without feeling a sudden need to get up and run from the room like the building was on fire. Honestly, I was on a scuba diving trip in Honduras earlier this year with a dozen Americans whom I did not know, and I was finding myself standing up in the boat staring at the horizon, wondering if I could swim to shore without drowning. You can only tolerate someone singing the praises of horse deworming medication for so long. But our divisions have become seriously toxic, undoubtedly fueling the whole work from home movement, as people simply can't stand the company of their coworkers in many cases. And most politicians now are not elected because of their diplomacy skills or their history of statesmanship, but because of their fanatical devotion to guns, to conspiracy theories, and oftentimes barely disguised fascism. How do we heal this great divide that makes so many people speculate about a looming civil war, a war that is not so geographically identified as the last one was, of the North and the South? Now the divide runs not along a Mason-Dixon line, but it runs through our neighborhood and through our offices, through a lot of churches and families. We all know that national unity doesn't have to mean uniformity. We can disagree and still find common ground. We can compromise. There are political movements like the Problem Solvers and No Labels that seek to rise above partisan rhetoric, to find a way to genuinely put country before party and to return to actually governing rather than rejoicing in what you can stop the other party from doing. And folks, I know that there are times when a half a loaf is better than nothing. For example, it seems like a lot of the pandemic-related relief efforts that were distributed in 2020 were always so much less than what we needed. It was less than what was proposed, but still, the stimulus checks we got, the child income tax credits, probably a lot of the PPP money, resulted in a nearly 50% reduction of the number of children living in poverty in the United States between 2020 and 2021. Now that the stimulus checks are gone and the PPP program is not being renewed, I don't know if those children will slide back into poverty, but we did see significant improvement. Now, it galls me that there are children who are hungry and homeless in the richest country of the world, the richest country in the history of the world. But we cut that number nearly in half in just a year, and hell yeah, I'll take it. Could we do better? Of course we could. But this is one place where we really can't rationally let the perfect become the enemy of the good. Getting a compromise that allows conservatives and liberals to work together to get much-needed resources into the homes of impoverished children is something to crow about. But, and I have friends who really push the no labels movement on me, but I keep asking them to tell me, how will the no labels politicians get us to universal health care? Do they have a plan? How will they close the income gap that's creating so much poverty in America? Do they have a plan to reduce gun violence and to reduce the burning of fossil fuels? Because if they don't, their bipartisan ice cream socials might not be enough to matter. Incremental change, while it may feel good at the moment, can kill us. For example, we've seen the number of deaths from gun violence go way up during the pandemic. Now more than 40,000 Americans die every year from gunshot wounds, more than are dying from car accidents. Mass shootings regularly involve the use of assault military-style rifles, and most domestic shootings and suicides use handguns. Both of these weapons are designed for shooting people. They're not hunting guns. They're not even practical for home defense. These are guns designed to shoot people. And clearly, they are being used to shoot people. Most developed nations have banned private ownership of handguns and assault rifles. This summer, President Biden signed the first gun control legislation passed in more than 30 years. But did they outlaw assault rifles? Did they outlaw handguns? No, not even close. They didn't even limit the type or even the number of weapons a private citizen can buy or even how much ammunition they can buy. They expanded background checks a little bit. They restricted certain domestic violence offenders from being able to buy a gun if they tried to buy it at a gun shop, but nothing to stop them from buying it at a gun show. We couldn't even limit the age at which a kid can buy a military-style weapon. This wasn't a half loaf. Folks, this wasn't a heel, a crust of a bread. This was a symbolic gesture that is not likely to reduce the number of gun deaths in America by even 1%. It's better than nothing, we've been told, but seriously, is it? Is the gun lobby so strong that this is the best that our overpaid members of Congress and the Senate can be expected to do? This symbolic gesture is something to be proud of and not something that is actually a source of shame for this country. Now, in August, headlines jubilantly announced that legislation would finally allow Medicare, the largest purchaser of pharmaceutical drugs in the world, to negotiate for competitive pricing of medications. many of which have been driving senior citizens into bankruptcy or forcing them to choose just not to buy life-saving medications. But was it what the headline said, a massive victory? What could be more obvious than the fact that Medicare should have been able to negotiate for drug prices all along? The Canadian government does, even our Veterans Administration does. How much power do the pharmaceutical companies have that we can't ask for competitive bids? Why has this been so hard to implement? But even worse, look at how this major victory is being rolled out. This massive victory doesn't do anything at all for 4 years. And it isn't until 2026 that Medicare can begin to take bids, but they have to identify only 10 medications. Think about all the medications you see behind your pharmacist's counter, but only 10 of them 4 years from now can be put up for bids. The next year they can add 15 more to the list, and then 15 more the year after that, and 20 more the year after that. If there's not a change in the administration in the White House, that might wipe out the whole plan. But in 6 years, we might get up to taking bids on 60 different medications. That's the best we can hope for? That's a massive victory? Vladimir Putin is crazy and power hungry, and he has a nuclear arsenal. But our government can stand up to him so much more than they can stand up to the pharmaceutical industry. Folks, do you realize that this one for-profit industry has more power than our whole government, along with all of the American senior citizens whose very lives depend upon proper medical care? I get it that it was a fight to even get this little bit of progress through Congress. But is this a compromise? Is this good for America? Am I wrong to say that this is way too little and way too late? But there is nowhere that such compromise is more telling than when it comes to the environment. We have known for more than 50 years that our burning of fossil fuels was negatively affecting the global climate. We have known for half of that time that if we don't stop it, our own planet, our only planet, will become uninhabitable to humans. It is as if we had set out to sail the sea in a small wooden boat, and one person has taken up the hobby of drilling holes in the bottom of the boat. Everyone can see that what they're doing is going to cause the boat to sink, but the oil and coal industry just likes drilling holes in the bottom of our boat, and they don't want to stop. The Inflation Reduction Act, just passed in August, will invest $360 billion in a move away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy. This will result in a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions over the next 10 years, which is to say that coal and oil will be forced over the next decade to drill 40% fewer holes in the bottom of our boat. We know that we are killing the planet. What's worse is we know how to stop killing the planet. We not only know how to stop, but we also know at this point that renewable energy sources will be less expensive to individual Americans than burning coal and gas. But we are going to make this transition very slowly because we are protecting the profits of the oil and coal industries. We know we're killing the planet. We know how to fix the problem. We just aren't going to do it because it would negatively affect the profits of the corporations that are still drilling holes in the bottom of the boat. Do you hear me? We're going to make our planet uninhabitable. We know how to stop it. We know how to reverse the causes, but we don't know how to make it profitable to existing oil and coal industries, so we're not going to do it. Yes, This is the first real climate legislation passed in 32 years. That's at least half a loaf, right? But if it won't stop the total collapse of the world's climate, it's not a compromise. It's a suicide pact. We want to end the partisan divide. We want Americans to work together for the common good. We religious people speak the language of reconciliation, of community, of harmony, of forgiveness and hope. We should be facilitating a reunion of the left and the right, the progressives and the conservatives. But that reconciliation needs to take place on higher ground than an almost certain death. For years now, I've been trying to get Cafe Press to use my idea for a t-shirt. I would like to share this observation with the world. As much as we want to get along, as much as we want peace, we need to realize that peace without justice is just surrender. I feel like those groups that want us to stop squabbling and to peacefully get along with those who don't want to give health care to everyone, who don't want to pay unskilled workers a living wage, who don't want the children of the poor to get an education, I just feel like they are asking me to surrender, to give up my values, to go place peace higher than compassion. And guys, I'm not ready to surrender. I'm not a radical. I'm not an extremist. I can be a moderate as long as we save the planet. As long as we get to universal health care, as long as we can bring an end to the ravages and the violence of poverty. But if you don't care about those things, then you're the radical. You're the extremist. I really honestly don't care if the plan is a capitalist, a socialist, or if it's a plan you just read about in People magazine. Just be sure you have a plan. Otherwise, you're the one that's going to drill the rest of the holes in the boat, and that, I submit, is just plain crazy.
Thank you for watching our videos. We are entirely dependent on the donations of our listeners and members. We hope that you find this content to be important enough to help us to keep offering these videos to the public at no charge by becoming a regular contributor. Please click on the donate button on our website at www.spfccc.org. Thank you for your support of progressive religious programming.